Hello there.
Hello.
Sorry, Chris. I've always wanted to lead off a podcast with that. We were just chatting before we went on, and I could have prefaced that I was going to give a really bad Alec Guinness or Ewan McGregor impression there. But welcome to the Six Scale Scavengers podcast. Whether you're a returning listener, you've been here since the beginning, or brand new, first thing, welcome. And this is a podcast where Chris and myself, we talk about our adventures in hot toy collecting, focusing on the Star Wars and Marvel licenses. Chris, we're just growing community. I think if I was to listen back to a couple of our first episodes, I think that's the part that gets me, is just the sense of community and the listenership that's growing. And, I just thought we were going to just ramble on, talk about hot toys and news and all that other stuff, but it's really turning a little bit more than that. And I probably mention it every episode and drink, but I have to mention it. So whether you're new, whether you've been around since the beginning.
Yeah, it's crazy how every episode, every day, every week, we just keep growing, and it's all positive, and it's just so much fun to interact with everybody and see what everybody else has got going on.
I mean, not that long ago, Chris, we were talking about, we couldn't believe that we had like 1,000 downloads, and now we're just shy, when I looked the other day, of about 2,000, with listeners in the Netherlands and Australia and overseas and East Coast, West Coast. It's hot toys is that common language. I mentioned it last time out when we were talking about the really cool promotional videos that Hot Toys was starting to do. And Hot Toys is a common language for all of us. It's a shared love. It's still a niche collecting thing for a lot of people, but if we can help bring it out more into the mainstream and have more people enjoy this passion that you and I have, then let's just keep it going. So Chris, we'll go through the agenda here, and we're light on figure news, but we are not light on movie news. And we usually lead our banter off with that. We are going to cover the news. We are going to talk a little bit about strategy of collecting, the differences between Star Wars and Marvel, and the things that we've found that you might want to keep in mind. And you're getting 2 audio reviews for the price of 1 in this episode. And I'm not going to mention the episode number because I'm not really superstitious, Chris, but I don't want to mention it. We'll move on to the next one when we get there. But we are going to be doing audio reviews of 2 figures that were on our top 5 list personally for 2018. We haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. And to be honest, it's kind of the calm before the storm, because I've got a few figures on the way that I was hoping, Chris, I'd have them in hand before we recorded. We'll be getting one tomorrow and another the following day. And that will start to be our ammunition for future upcoming episodes. But we did want to kind of go back and look at Yondu Deluxe from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, MMS 436, which you have in hand. And then a figure that both you and I have in hand with Iron Man Mark IV from Iron Man 2, MMS 461, D21 for Diecast 21. And we'll both be reviewing that. We both have that in hand. The figure itself is the same that comes with the suit-up gantry. Neither of us went that direction, so we won't be able to review the gantry part, but the figure is exactly the same. Both phenomenal figures. Really looking forward to talking with you about those, Chris. It's been an exciting week for Marvel fans. I wish I could say the same for Star Wars fans, because we still don't have an Episode 9 trailer, and we might have to wait until Star Wars Celebration in April to get that. Not that I'm bitter. We are 50 days today, Chris, from Captain Marvel in theaters. Wow.
Yeah.
We are, as of yesterday, 100 days from Avengers Endgame.
Oh,
that seems like it's coming up quicker than I would expect. And it was just really weird once we turned the calendar to 2019 in January. It's like, oh, it's in April. Oh, Captain Marvel's in March. I'm like, oh boy. Oh, actually, no. Is Endgame still in May?
Well, we'll
They
probably
might.
see it move.
Yeah, they'll
to the
probably
end.
move it up to last week in April, like they did before, when they, had that whole contrived social media campaign with Robert Downey Jr. and said, "Hey, Marvel, why don't we release the film a week early so it comes out the same time across the world?" And yeah, they did that for us stateside. So, Chris, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Spider-Man I almost said Homecoming, the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer that dropped yesterday. And if you were out on social media, you got a sense over the weekend that it was probably going to happen this week. And then Tom Holland, the actor portraying Peter Parker in the film, had said, I believe on Monday, so I talked to Sony. And I think everybody kind of knew that it probably meant on Tuesday of this week that we were going to get the trailer. And it's the typical teaser trailer, Chris, but to be honest, it gave us way more than I thought we were going to get. I thought we were going to get a couple snapshots. I mean, they have to be extra careful to not give anything away for Endgame, and diehard fans, Chris, are already losing their flipping minds over this and that, and you're giving things away. And I'm like, dude or dudette, just enjoy the ride. They're going to make the movies the way they want to. We're just here to enjoy them.
Yeah, just chill out and take it all in. And I had heard that it was coming, and our buddy Scott Inch was like, the new Spider-Man trailer was pretty good. And I'm like, what? It's like, so I instantly went on YouTube and man, we got so much content in that little teaser. Lots of stuff going on. Gets the wheels grinding in the brain. What's going to happen in this? When does it take place? We see multiple suits, Spider-Man suits. We see a villain, a former director of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's one that if you guys haven't seen it yet, you got to check it out.
Yeah, and I think one thing we did is we post to our private Facebook group of, basically, projecting probably 4 of the figures that we will see. You mentioned the 2 Spider-Man suits. I highly doubt they're going to do another Nick Fury, but they might. They're not really going to do any of the secondary characters because just people probably won't buy those. Chris, I think the one that our group was most excited about, and when I look around to other groups out there as well, it's Mysterio. I think that's the one that has people the most intrigued.
Absolutely. We need a Spider-Man universe villain in our Hot Toys collection. We probably won't get that one that everybody...
Yeah, Vulture. I mean, it's funny to realize like how much Stan Lee and everybody made that. Spider-Man always had really cool villains. And for me, and I'm going to date myself here a little bit, but remembering watching the animated series on the cartoon on Fox and, seeing all the different villains and stuff that are there. And I really do hope that Marvel Studios and Sony continues to play nice in the sandbox, because I just love Spider-Man. He's such a great character. There's a lot of depth there. There's so much they can do. I think Mysterio's the guy that I think most people will gravitate to. I mean, there's very few people that out there that are gonna. I mean, I've seen a lot of people that are a little upset with themselves. They still don't have the Stark suit, the advanced suit one, because we do see it in even the teaser trailer of this one. So now it's been in Civil War. It's been in Homecoming. It was in the beginning of Infinity War. And now it's also making an appearance in Far From Home. So 4 movies for that one suit, which kicks ass, by the way. And the other 2 that we've saw, yeah, we'll see. The hype machine's already up in full effect here. And it's just going to be a great year for Marvel fans. I mean, to get Captain Marvel, Avengers Endgame, and then Spider-Man Far From Home. It's like the golden age, Chris, of being a comic book fan, for sure. And not even just the Marvel Studios cinematic universe. Because I know both you and I have had the opportunity since the last episode to go out into theaters and to see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And wow, just wow.
That's right, man. Wow. It was amazing.
It was amazing. Drink.
I know, right? And I wanted to, after the Golden Globes, and it winning Best Animated Picture, I was like, okay, I got to see this movie in the theaters before it goes away and just see what everybody's talking about. And there's another podcast I listened to, and I was holding off listening to their Spider-Verse spoiler review episode. And I'm like, dang it, I just want to listen to what they have to say about it. Because one of the hosts is a crazy, crazy big Spider-Man fan. And
That's Marvel Studio News, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Sean,
Great podcast, by the way.
Sean and Paul on there. Highly recommend. So I had some free time and the timing worked and I went and saw it. And I just, from the second that movie started, the the animation, everything just hooked me. And I'm obsessed with that soundtrack. I've been playing it on repeat. Even I got my girls dancing to it in the morning and stuff. And I just really like the story. It shows that anybody can be Spider-Man. You know, I won't spoil anything, but it's just got this great story. The voice actors do such a good job. I'm looking forward to what Sony can bring to the table with expanding this animated universe for Spider-Man.
Yeah, and I haven't had the opportunity to watch Venom, so I'm not going to say one thing or another about that. But having just seen this animated entry that they had, and they had Lord Miller, who did the Lego movie. Obviously, it's well documented they were fired from directing Solo, but I think the animated realm is where they thrive. And yeah, just wow. I mean, it definitely is a must see for comic book fans, for Spider-Man fans. I know a lot of well-respected people that I respect have said it's one of their favorite comic book movies of all time. And I'm not sure I'm ready to go to that length. I mean, I did go with my family. I took my son and my wife, and we went last week and we saw it as a family, and it was really cool. And I mean, I looked over it a couple different times, and my son, who's 7, is, doing fake shadow boxing, thinking, when Miles Morales is on there, just kicking some butt as Spider-Man. And it's kind of interesting to see what they'll eventually be able to do with the MCU and having Miles in there at some point. I mean, he technically already is in the MCU. It was kind of referenced in Homecoming. So they've already kind of set the stage for that at some point. And the character is very fascinating. I didn't know much about his version of Spider-Man and the different skills and abilities that he has, but it just worked. And it had a great character arc for a lot of different people. And yeah, we don't do much movie reviewing on this here podcast because we talk about hot toys, but inevitably the lines kind of blend a little bit. So I think you got a ringing endorsement for both Chris and I.
It is. I just wonder what Hot Toys could do with some of those characters. Maybe, I know they do movie accurate and stuff, but I don't know.
They'll have to eventually make it into a feature film. And I think the deal that Hot Toys has is with Marvel Studios. And I think that's how they would, obviously that's why you're not seeing anything out there for Venom. And I mean, there's some people that are trying third-party stuff that are out there. And I think that's why Homecoming gave us that opportunity to get, the figures that we did from that movie. So we'll see. I mean, there's just a couple other, I dare say minor stuff because they're still pretty cool. I know this was of interest to you with the preview coming out, the trailer for Punisher season 2 on Netflix. And I don't know if I've admitted this on this podcast before, Chris, but I haven't seen any of the Marvel stuff on Netflix. I know I get a lot of flack for that from time to time. I don't have the time, and it seems like a big time investment for me at this point. So maybe I'll just wait till they're all done, and then I'll binge watch them all. But I mean, I've heard good things about Punisher. I've heard good things about Daredevil, Jessica Jones and stuff. It's just, I don't know.
You won't have to wait too long for them to be done.
Yeah.
I didn't know that this was coming. This trailer was dropping. I knew we were kind of expecting it to come soon, but I mean, it's taking Punisher to the next level. It is very violent and there's a lot of graphic stuff going on, but It looked awesome. I can't wait. I'm glad I got the Punisher figure when I did, because I'm sure that will potentially spike back up after this. I don't know. I don't know if they would release another version of Punisher, but we got something else to talk about that might tie that character into a release. Just give Star Wars some love. Resistance trailer drop for the second half of season 1. That's a show that I'm behind on. Hasn't really hooked me, so I gotta binge that at some point. But I'm not gonna. It's Star Wars content, and it's new content, and that's always a good thing. I know we won't get any Hot Toys figures on it, for that series, but it's just a little taste of what's to come later this year with episode 9.
Well, the trailer's out, and the first episode of the second half of season 1's out, and it looks like it's going to tie into The Force Awakens and some of the aftermath of that. I thought that was something that was completely surprising. So that'll be interesting to see things potentially happening from a different point of view when everything else was going down on Hazian Prime. So yeah, we'll see. I completely agree with you, Chris. I mean, you and I, we're in our mid to late 30s. We are not the target audience for this. I will also say though, too, my son who's 7, it hasn't really grasped him either. I mean, he laughs at some of the parts and stuff. I like what they're doing. I like that they're expanding the universe. And I think people like us need to not get upset when something doesn't fit what our target audience is. I mean, we can find out what some of the bigger plot points are after the fact without having to necessarily, like you said, binge watch the entire thing.
Right on.
All right. So wanted to bring back the MCU Easter egg. And Chris, I know we're talking about Mark IV from Iron Man 2. We just mentioned Peter Parker. So I found one that I felt like matched all of those things into one little interesting tidbit that when I read this, I was like, nah. And then I looked it up afterwards, and it was, I guess, semi-confirmed. The kid wearing the toy Iron Man mask who shows up at the Stark Expo at the end of Iron Man 2, who ends up getting rescued before he gets taken out by one of the Hammer bots, is in fact a young Peter Parker.
No way.
Yes way. So I don't know. So here's the thing. I don't know if it got retconned in afterwards, but I swear that the director has actually come out and said that was kind of their intention, that they wanted to put that seed in down the line. Obviously, they didn't want to show the face, because if they ever didn't get the chance to work out that deal with Sony, then that wouldn't actually matter. And to be honest, it's not a huge plot point or anything, but it's interesting to see, I'm trying to think what year that takes place in MCU years. I mean, it came out in 2009. I think it was either 2008 or 2009 in the MCU, and you figure Homecoming came out in 2017. It very well could be. So I don't know. I just found that very fascinating.
I like that stuff. It just makes it a more connected universe. But hey, a happy Hogan directed that movie, so you never know there.
Yeah, and he's still kicking around in Far From Home, hitting on Aunt May, and I like where that's going.
I know. I don't blame him there.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're gonna hit over to news, and we could talk about this kind of at the end in plug time, Chris, but I feel like this was a good opportunity for us to talk about this. So one thing you and I have been putting our heads together for a month or two now, maybe even a little bit longer, trying to take in some suggestions from more of our involved listeners and trying to figure out how can we involve our listeners with the show as part of the Six Scale Scavengers community. I feel like one of our members had suggested this, and we kind of took it and run with it, and we did a trial run already in between the last 2 episodes. But in our private Facebook group, Six Scale Scavenger Collectors, I don't know if I'm fully ready to commit to this time schedule, Chris, but I'm thinking in the weeks that we don't have a release for this podcast, we're going to do a Facebook Live event within that group. So if you're not within the group, you won't be able to tune in. And we're also use that as an opportunity to talk to some of the people that are in our great community. And last time out, I was just going to test it out, kick the tires, and see how it was going to go, make sure all the technology was going to work. And it was a good learning experience. We had a couple people on. We had Steven, Mila. We had, of course, PJ, the Paradox nerd. And it was great just chatting with them live and having everybody be able to comment in and the views and stuff. I think we had over like 200 comments in a like 45-minute Facebook Live event. So based on the success of that and how fun that was to do, I think we're going to start doing that more often. So stay tuned for details of those in the group that we have on Facebook. And if you're not in there, there's still always an opportunity to join. And we'd love to continue to grow that really tight-knit community that's really growing there. And just see where it goes. I mean, and that is one way that our listeners can kind of get involved. You know, we want people to, you know, share unboxings, do collection tours, ask questions that they have. They, you know, we're looking for answers. One thing that was really cool in between last time as well, Chris, is Steven, who's been one of the people that's been with us almost since the beginning. He was getting the Mark 46 concept art figure in the mail, and he was getting it before I was this week. And I joked to him, I'm like, oh, you should really do a live unboxing video. And I just thought he was going to put a video link up on, you know, on Facebook of him doing that. And he went ahead and did a whole production, put it up on his YouTube channel, Infinite Monkey. And he says it was his first video ever, Chris. But to be honest, I'm like, that's 5 times better than what you or I could do. I just have to commend him. He did an excellent job. And well, I'll let you do the funny part here.
So he said that if anybody has any complaints about the video, they can direct them to Brian.
Who I guess I'm the complaint department.
just send it to Brian's inbox, and he'll take care of that in the best way possible.
Yeah. So no complaints yet. I thought it was great.
No, he did an awesome job. I even, you know, dropped in a picture referencing, you know, the pose that he intended on doing, and then had his little graphic there. I thought it was awesome. I hope that more people do it. I feel like now I should probably start doing them too.
Nah, you and I don't have any talent for that stuff. Who are you joking?
I'm like, so this is the figure, and
especially doing it live with one take. You should see how much I edit out of what you and I talk about on this live podcast.
Yeah, me plus live equals not the greatest.
Yeah, lots of ums and ahs. Yeah. So, anyways, on to real news. So exciting stuff there. Hopefully everybody enjoys that and looks for an opportunity. And we hope to get more of our listeners on to talk live and help connect other collectors with other like-minded collectors in this really cool collecting space, and just learning more about some of these amazing people. I have to give a shout out here to Mila, who's in our group. She does some fantastic work with painting of head sculpts and whatnot. And I have really enjoyed having her within our group and just seeing her. She's posting almost daily with stuff about her collection, and her collection room, it must be just this shrine that I would love to see one day, because there's just so much there. And yeah, it's amazing to me that I just feel like by connecting with other collectors here, so we're getting outside of the little bubble that we're in. And this is not an echo chamber for Chris and I. We want to be able to share our experiences with others, talk about the things that people want to hear about. And people have given us comments and stuff. You know, they enjoy being they enjoy that we're part of their morning commute or commute to and from work. And obviously you and I both consume podcasts as well. It's a great way to pass the time. And it's an honor to be part of somebody's day, because time is precious and we all don't have a whole lot of it. And the fact that somebody is taking time out of their day to make a point to listen to us and be part of that community, I think that's the thing that I don't know, let's say I get choked up about it, but it is pretty cool.
Sorry, man. Just get the tissues out. it feels awesome.
All right, Chris, I feel like we're podcasting from the future now because we are podcasting from the future. We started off episode 13 on January 16th, and we're now starting the news and the rest of the show here on January 20th. We just saw our beloved New England Patriots book their ticket to the Super Bowl, so we're both pretty jacked up about that. I had a little bit of a family emergency. Everybody's fine now, but I had to duck out of the live Google Hangout that Chris and I were doing on Wednesday, and it was around 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. I didn't get home until 2:30 in the morning, and I was not going to make my good friend Chris hang around that long, and we just couldn't really coordinate schedules till now. So, Chris, I mean, nobody wants to hear our Patriots love here. We're here to talk about hot toys.
I don't think they do. So we'll quickly move on from that topic.
All right, let's jump into news. Let's do that. So we get a lot of news. And the funny thing is, Chris, is the benefit of hindsight now. We would have only had a few of these things to talk about on Wednesday, but now we've got a few more things. Maybe it's going to end up working better. We'll probably move up our recording of episode 14. So these episodes will be a little bit closer together. As we started off the podcast, we will be trying to do more live Facebook events in our private group, Six Sale Scavenger Collectors. But Chris, the news, and this is news that we talked about on our first Facebook Live event, was Director Krennic finally getting released. We talked about it last episode, Chris, that he was teased. Hot Toys didn't wait around on this one at all.
They didn't. They dropped him, went up for pre-order. He's up on Sideshow and other retailers now. And Director Krennic looks pretty dang good. He looks just like that Aussie Mendo.
Ben Mendelsohn.
Oh, yes. So what do you think of it?
Yeah, let's give the stats first. So this is MMS 519. It is going to be dropping later this year between October and December 2019. And the retail price of this is going to be $235. Now, it looks like they are including, speaking of time travel, Chris, that it looks like they're including his rain gear when he's on, drawing a blank on that planet. No, not Edu, but the planet at the very where Galen is.
Yes.
I think it does include his two different ranks, and I think it's intended that when they go to try to bring Galen and his family back to work on the Death Star. So I know a little bit of people said the rain gear looks a little wonky. I don't really care. I think this is fantastic. It looks just like Ben Mendelsohn. We've talked about it. People are really trying to scoop up Death Troopers. Actually, I just saw somebody during the game today on Tashi Station was able to acquire all three versions of the Death Trooper, either by purchase or trade. So yeah, there's going to be people out there that are going to be looking for those and recreating that scene. And it's definitely high on our list of films that we love with Rogue One in the Star Wars universe. And we'll talk a little bit about the pros and cons and the challenges and benefits of collecting either Star Wars or Marvel or both. So yeah, I think this one definitely is going to live up to the hype. And I mean, Hot Toys is always going to have those people looking, where's Cyborg, where's Vulture? The figures just keep getting better and better. I mean, as I've got the new Luke Skywalker sitting on my shelf here, and the figures are just fantastic, Chris. They're just getting better.
They're knocking the face sculpts out of the park. And I mean, not being a Star Wars collector here for Hot Toys, the promo shots of Krennic there, they make me want to jump over to that side. He just looks great. I don't know, especially the one with him and Vader in Vader's castle.
Yeah.
It just looks so good.
So the news doesn't stop there. We jump from the Star Wars universe, Chris, over to Marvel. And this technically is not the Marvel MCU. This actually, Chris, is from the Marvel Future. Is it Future Fights? I should have wrote that part down here in the notes.
Yeah, it is.
Marvel Future Fight. I'll edit that out so it sounds cleaner. But we're going to have that rumored Punisher War Machine mashup. And when we originally wrote the notes for this, Chris, we were going to talk just about the tease that Hot Toys dropped on all their social media. Clearly, super sleuths out there figured out that the Punisher logo was on the War Machine 3 Mark III armor. And I know our good friend Steven ran out and grabbed the Punisher 218, which shows Frank Castle getting the War Machine armor and wreaking havoc on the Marvel universe. This came out pretty quick too. They're teasing and putting things up for pre-order, Chris. So this is going to retail for $392. January to March 2020 is the projected release date, and this definitely is in their video game line, though. So we usually talk about MMS for the movie Masterpiece series. This is VGM for the video game series. Video game 33, but it is their 28th diecast figure that they've done. This will be diecast. Chris, essentially it is a repaint of the War Machine Mark III. Interestingly enough, though, they did not just reuse the Punisher head sculpt from the Netflix series. They went ahead and did a whole new face sculpt on that. To be honest, Chris, and I know I threw it out in our private group, I thought this thing was going to be over 400. I think my guess was 444. It came in at 392. So what are your early thoughts on this one?
So I was right there with you. I thought it was going to be above 400. And I think it looks amazing. I think
Drink.
I know, right? Drink. Sorry. It just looks like an awesome figure. The deco on it, the weapons, everything about it just screams coolness. And the fact that they have a video game based head sculpt for Punisher is pretty cool. I think it opens the door for all sorts of possibilities. Depending on how well this sells, they could go down, a whole new rabbit hole for characters, different costume changes and that sort of thing in the video game line. But I'm digging it. It's not really on my radar, but I'm excited for those who are excited.
Yeah, this one also. So same thing with Krennic. It's not going to be on my pre-order list. And this is another one too. Punisher's not really my jam. I really don't even have War Machine on my focus, but I think the biggest thing about this one, Chris, is the hype is getting almost out of control for this one. I feel like you and I, Chris, have our finger on the pulse of a lot of these different groups, whether it's Tashi Station, 1/6 Society, our own group, the Hot Toys Collectors group, that you can kind of see when there's a lot of buzz and positive buzz. People are buzzing for this figure. I don't think pre-orders are going to sell out by any means, but this one is going to be one that a lot of people are going to end up with. And to be honest, I think that actually means that I'm not saying the figure won't eventually be valuable, but it's not also something that a lot of people aren't going to pre-order. The production run won't be small, and then people looking for it afterwards will have difficulty getting it. I feel like the production run on this one's going to be pretty large because I think the pre-orders are going to be there to support it.
Definitely. I agree 100% on that point. And, it's just cool to have, you have a few Marvel characters in this video game line now with some of the Spider-Man figures. And I don't know if I might be missing one or two other ones, but it's just cool because people can kind of start now with these characters and build the collection as they go forward with them.
So the last bit of news that we'll talk about, and this is the surprise to none because we talked about it last time out when Hot Toys did their promotional quarterly release projected, and Hulkbuster, the power pose from Avengers Infinity War, was included on there. And lo and behold, the pre-order moved up. We're looking at February to March 2019.
Damn. Got to get ready for, those payments to start hitting for those who have payment plans or one-time payment. We'll be getting that soon. Collectors will be getting that soon. I can't wait to see pictures of that in person. It looks pretty sweet. Again, I'm not going all in on Infinity War. I'm pretty close. In a perfect world, I totally get this, but it's one that I would like. I would really like to see it in person, honestly. But yeah, I'm waiting for some of our members to get it.
Yeah, agreed. I almost wish they would do the Hulkbuster Mark. What is that technically? Mark 44. I think that's technically what Mark 44 is. Yeah, I'd love to see that in a power pose, just because I'm not one that's going to be super articulating the Hulkbuster. And as much as I keep looking at it and thinking the one from Age of Ultron, that I mean, it just looks incredible. I think for myself, the one thing that would stop me from getting this version of the power pose, and while I try to hone in on my Iron Man focus, is the fact that Iron Man, Tony Stark, doesn't actually wear this, where it's Bruce Banner. And so, yeah, I don't know. That's just my one way of convincing myself out of, chasing that. I know a lot of people have the Mark IV Neon Tech in hand, and does look pretty cool. And I'm just not going to chase that right now. I've decided, down the line, if it becomes, available. I mean, I did get the Mark III stealth armor for almost $100 or more less than retail. So if I'm patient about it, I might be able to get a deal down the road, but it's not something I'm going to run out and chase. And I think based on that, I think also with this one, I definitely want to see this in action. But as an Iron Man collector, I'm giving myself a reason to pass on that one, Chris.
Well, it's good that you're giving yourself a reason to pass. Usually it's
yeah, because we're going to talk about our collection update, and this one got a little bit more interesting just because we had a couple extra days. And when we originally had our agenda and you and I were going back and forth on what we wanted to discuss, some of these figures were actually en route when we recorded the first segment of this episode, and I do actually have those in hand now. So we'll change things up this episode. I'll lead things off. So I did a couple pre-orders, using up some of those reward points that I had from figures I got at the end of the year. So I finally did pull the trigger on the Iron Man Mark 43 reissue. I just wanted to get that on my orders, and I wanted to make sure that I had my payment plan. I could start doing the monthly payments as soon as possible that they allow. And I think it's going to kick in starting in March. And that one's going to be this summer. This is one I actually did. So we're recording on Sunday evening, the 20th. Last night, I actually decided finally, I'm just like, all right, instead of just playing chicken with Endor Luke Skywalker, I'm just going to do it. I had more additional reward points. Went ahead and put in for that. Luke is a focus of mine. I love Return of the Jedi. I mean, I'd be kicking myself if I didn't go for that. And part of it is just making sure that I definitely would not have missed the figure. I mean, it's not going to be that desirable that I wouldn't be able to get it afterwards. To not have the opportunity to get it and get it as soon as possible, just because I might want to save like 10 or 20 bucks. It didn't seem like it was something I wanted to do with a favorite character. Maybe if it wasn't a focus, I might have approached it a little bit differently. But I think a lot of our listeners, Chris, have really seen us slanting more towards Marvel, just because a lot more of my collection has gone that way. You're solely a Marvel focused collector and not doing Star Wars. And I'm just like, nah, I don't, not that it's entirely up to me to make sure that the line keeps doing well, but I think the line also needs people like me that is willing to do the pre-orders to keep that thing going, because I mean, Sideshow is sitting on quite a bit of those Star Wars figures in stock right now.
Yeah, they need another big event or sale or something to move more product, it seems like. But yeah, great figure. Again, one that I can't wait for you to get. I'd like to see it in person. It's one that I may down the road get to add toward my little Endor collection. But anyway, I mean, it's just like, it's a tough call. You want to lock it in now or play the game, like you were saying. It's it might not go in your favor.
So it didn't end there, Chris. I actually have some pre-orders that did arrive. So I did end up with Luke Skywalker Deluxe from The Last Jedi. Did a live unboxing of that in our Facebook group. That was kind of interesting. to do that. I've done videos of unboxing of things before, but like not actually to do it live in the group. So that was interesting. That will be our episode 14 review. So I'm not going to talk about that too much. Iron Man Mark 46 concept art from Captain America Civil War that arrived. I completed my trinity of Mark 46, Mark 46 concept art, and Mark 47. That will probably be a review that we'll do coming up soon. So again, I won't talk too much about that, but fantastic in hand and definitely worth it. And if you missed out on 46 and 47, I think it's a good substitute for that. It's kind of the best of both of those.
Steven did a nice little unboxing of that for us on the group. So that I'd like to say thanks to him for doing that.
Yeah. And apparently, Chris, I am the complaint department for his YouTube channel, Infinite Monkey. I did get a kick out of that. So we have talked about it quite a bit. We've been doing our rewatch of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Chris. I just finished up Age of Ultron. So right before that had done Guardians 1 and Guardians 2. We have these little epiphanies, you and I, every so often. I decided that I really do love the character of Rocket. So what happens when you do that, Chris? Well, you go hunting. And this is where it was a little interesting. I'm going to go off kind of on a little bit of a tangent here. So I've been eyeballing the one from Guardians 1 on Big Bad Toy Store for a while because it's under retail. And I finally went for that one just because it was a good price and I had money in my budget set aside where it wasn't going to totally derail what I wanted to do. But then I really wanted the figure from Infinity War, but I didn't want to have to go and get the set that included Groot. Well, luckily enough, I found a seller on eBay that was selling just Rocket separately and was going to come with a box and everything else, basically everything but the Teenage Groot. So I went and got that. And then to my surprise, when I'm looking at some reviews and I saw somebody doing a comparison video, it was actually I didn't even realize that at the time that it's the same exact figure that was in Guardians 2, which was the standard version. They just basically did a repack. And it wasn't like I had like this facepalm moment, Chris, but I was like, even somebody like you and I, that I feel like we're so dialed into this stuff that I just completely missed that boat. But as we usually admit, we're not experts. We're learning. And I think what that also did, because I was like, well, I also then probably need to go back and get the one from Guardians 2. And I'm like, well, I already have it. So and I also rationalized this one, Chris, to say, okay, for Captain America Civil War, I don't have the battling version, but I'm not going to get it just so I have a battle damage shield and a base. So I did the same thing for that Rocket. So I got the one from Infinity War on the way. I do have Rocket from Guardians 1. And let me just say the images don't do it any justice. In hand, it looks phenomenal. And it's obviously smaller. He's already got a very good spot in my collection already.
Yeah, live and learn, right? It happens to the best of us. But it's not like it wasn't a big deal, but still one of those things that kind of irks us as collectors every now and again.
It was a good mistake to make because then I saved myself from having to buy a third figure.
Exactly. See, a blessing in disguise.
Whew, all right, deep breath. That's my update, if there ever was an update.
Yeah.
So what do you got going on, Chris?
Nothing crazy. Went a little bit of a different route. Went some third-party figures. I pre-ordered the Toys R Us Steel 2.0. Wanted to add that figure to my Deadpool and Logan display whenever that happens. And then I also pre-ordered the Super Duck Mantis kit from Toys Origin. And I'm a huge Guardians of the Galaxy fan, and I figured that could be a little project later this year. Hopefully, heard Super Duck is usually late on their releases, but nonetheless, not a huge investment for that, but still it's close enough to the Mantis character, in my opinion. And then also another great thing, I was gifted a beautifully painted Peggy Carter sculpt from one of our loyal listeners and group members, Mila. So I I really have to thank her for that. And I'm going to make that another custom project, see how I want to set that figure up. The one thing about that is I'm already thinking about, should I get Rescue Cap or should I get Star Spangled Cap? Or how am I going to display her? So I think I'm going to kind of make that project a slow burn.
Definitely. And, Mila is phenomenal. She's a new member to our private group, has been a listener for a while, and just has a fantastic collection. And it is she had an opportunity to bring her on to the first trial run we did for our live Facebook event. And is just such an awesome person, is a great collector, is usually sharing things daily from her collection, is, like you said, is an artist herself, does phenomenal face painting and sculpts and stuff. And that's the type of person, is just fantastic. We love having part of our community, because that's what this podcast, that's what this community is about, is just doing this for the love of it. Nobody's out here to make a profit. We're not trying to pretend to be the best. We're not trying to be the voice of hot toy collecting. We're a voice. I know we're starting to coin that phrase the last couple episodes, but yes, completely agree. And simply just super generous as well, with no other reservations other just knowing that you would, appreciate it a ton. So that is pretty cool.
Very thankful.
Speaking of Marvel and Star Wars, Chris, so this is just a kind of a topic that I wanted to cover a little bit before we get into our dual review here of Iron Man Mark IV and Yondu. There was some discussion in our group recently, and it really got me to thinking, because when we look at Marvel and we look at Star Wars collecting, Marvel was really there from the beginning. And right when Iron Man was released in 2008, not long after that, they had the first versions of a lot of the Iron Man figures. And, Hot Toys has been around since the beginning of the MCU, basically. They've almost concurrently had a ton of success going forward. And obviously Hot Toys is riding on the coattails of Marvel. I don't think it's the other way around, but, I'm a little biased about that. At the same time, Star Wars didn't really get its start. It didn't get even, I don't even know if it technically got the license in 2012, but they did a DX figure of Luke Skywalker Bespin that a lot of people are still trying to chase to get into their collection, because now 6 or 7 years later, it doesn't look like we're going to get a 2.0 version of that figure. And then fast forward to late 2014, when they start doing Obi-Wan Kenobi, Han Solo, Chewbacca, A New Hope, Luke Skywalker. At that point, the original trilogy is come and gone, the prequel trilogy is come and gone, and they were set up to basically hit the ground running with The Force Awakens. And they've certainly have supported the newer movies, Chris, much better than they have from the original 6. And I think that has presented opportunities for a lot of frustration to kick in when you're trying to build out a collection and even trying to project like what figures they could do. I mean, a lot of people have been clamoring for a Krennic for a long time, and they're finally going to get it. But there's a lot of other, I could just list off a ton of other characters that they still have to get around to doing. And I think Marvel has the benefit of, they're basically following the movie release schedule going along. Every so often they'll go backwards, mostly for Iron Mans, to redo them as die-cast. But I don't know, Chris, where should we start with this? Because I think there's some benefits to both, but how should a collector approach this?
It's a situation that can be looked at in a number of ways, but if you're starting out and you want to collect both lines, then you've got a tall task ahead of you. You've really got to figure out what direction you want to go in to start off. Do you want to start getting figures that are more affordable and go from there? Do you want to be a completist? Do you want to just collect certain movies, certain trilogies? For the MCU, is there certain characters that you like, whatever. So it's really tough to say how to start out and look at it, just because there's there's just so many possibilities. But really, if you're going to start with Star Wars, I would just look at what is available right now on pre-order, and just start planning from there. Like we always talk about, budget, do your research, see what figures came out, and just go for the ones that really pop for you initially, and then maybe fill in displays or holes after that. It's a tough one. How about
Yeah, I think the one thing that got me, and somebody in our group had mentioned the fact that they had, I did have this figure in my collection before I parted with it, but having Princess Leia having Princess Leia Hoth, and the fact that there's not really that many figures to go with it. We don't have a we don't have a Hoth Han yet. We don't have a Bespin Han that could double as that scene. And for collectors that like to set things up either, by movie or by scene, Hot Toys' inconsistent release schedule for a lot of these Star Wars figures, I think, is leading to a lot of frustration. And I don't know how they fix that, because they also have to walk a fine line between supporting the new movies as they come out and then finding characters that they can go back and do and make sure that if they go through the effort of producing them, that they're going to sell well. I mean, you're always going to have people that are looking for specific figures and they want Hot Toys to do it because they're going to knock it out of the park, as we say. But if they're only going to be able to sell like 100 figures worldwide or something like that, well, they're probably not going to go through the effort of trying to do all the sculpts and stuff for that. So, and I think maybe that's, Chris, where some of these third-party companies have come in and found an area where they can, whether it's legal or illegal, that's to be, that's not for me to determine. But I think it also does help fill in some of these gaps in collections where, people want some of these characters, and that might be the way that they get made. Yeah, it definitely presents challenges, and I think you have to kind of know that if it is a popular character from a popular movie, it probably will get made eventually, and just practice patience, because that's going to be the best way to eventually have the collection each person, each of our listeners is really looking for it. And I think that's something that you and I are kind of on board with too. I know you're not collecting the Star Wars line at this point, but I'm just kind of reacting to things as they come out. And, I'll have in the back of my mind some figures that I want, but even the ones that I really was looking forward to, I just kind of decide to change my focus a lot. And that can happen too. And I think that's even taking the commitment to make a pre-order. I think going back to what I talked about a little bit ago with finally deciding to do the pre-order for Endor Luke, that was something that I was almost willing to play a game of chicken with. That 6 months ago would have been an instant day one pre-order for me, because that's something that I hit as soon as they showed the teaser image for it, and they had it at San Diego Comic-Con, or it was at New York Comic-Con. Well, I can't remember which one it was, but I'm just like, that looks fantastic.
It's a tough one as far as that goes. It's a tough one when there's figures that you really like and they don't have any partner to hang out with on the shelf, because a Hoth Leia is a great figure, but it kind of stands alone. And then having her just by herself on, say, a DTOF, she's not a big figure, but they teased Bespin Han and maybe a Lando, but who knows when that stuff's going to come. But the flip side is you might be able to get Hoth Leia for a really good price now on the secondary market. Someone in those shoes that is kind of like, well, this figure doesn't really fit. This might be the time to buy the figure. It might be one of those games you play where you're betting that those other figures will come out, and then you'll be able to pre-order them, and you can kind of plan out your display long term, as opposed to trying to fill it right now.
Yeah, I mean, we could keep going on and on about this topic. I mean, we'll try to wrap the conversation up here too, but yeah, I would just say, if you want to talk about this more, we've got our Facebook group. We're available on social media. You and I, Chris, we're not huge on that, but one thing that I usually forget to mention. So, I mean, yeah, Chris, we've got our Facebook groups and social media for people to get a hold of us, but, email too. I mean, we have sixscalescavengers@gmail.com. I know social media is not for everybody. And, we only talk about our Facebook group so often just because it is kind of an extension of this podcast. But, there is email. Just a couple of days ago, Chris, we got an email from Michael and reached out to us. And Michael, first, thanks for doing that. It meant a lot. And it sounds silly, but just getting little things like that just make this all worth it. Like I said, we're not doing this for profit. We're just hoping to hopefully cover our hosting fees so that although the time and effort spent to do this does cost something, time is an opportunity cost, but it's something we love doing. And if we can somehow just offset just hosting costs, then really there's a net. I would rather just have it as a wash. I mean, we have our eBay affiliate links. We've got our TeePublic store if you want to rock a Six Scale Scavengers t-shirt. But yeah, I mean, emails like that just make it worth it. And just, it's a good reminder that we're doing this for the right reasons, for the love of collecting and, just trying to be a voice, not the voice.
Yep, it was pretty cool to get an email from Michael there, some very kind words. And yeah, we have listeners that are not on social media. So we're trying to be available as many ways as possible. And, we'll see how things go. But yeah, we're just very thankful that we have such a variety of listeners.
All right, Chris, let's hit it home. And I wanted to do 2 reviews. I'll do a I don't know if this will be a supersized episode, but we did want to do the 2 reviews of 2 figures that we did have in our top 5 list of 2018. We have 2, and we're not going to do a super in-depth review of these, but they're both fantastic enough that we wanted to go on record giving our audio review in just a little bit more detail than what we shared in our top 5 episode at the end of 2018, the beginning of 2019. So, Chris, we have these 2. We have Yondu Deluxe from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, MMS 436, retailed for $251. And then we also have Iron Man Mark IV from Iron Man 2, MMS 461, D21 for Diecast 21, and that retailed for $345. I believe 462 was the Mark IV with a gantry set, and neither of us went that direction. And for me, I just didn't do it because of the cost and the space, but the figure itself is fantastic. So which one do you want to go with first, Chris?
Let's go with Iron Man.
All right, let's go with Iron Man. So this is a figure you and I both have in hand, and I'm just going to get right to it, Chris. It's a fantastic armor. It has such good presence. I love the contrasting colors of this, especially when looking back at the Iron Man Mark III that they did, the diecast version, the reissue from Iron Man 1. And it's interesting to see the evolution of it, but it's also interesting to see the evolution that in 4 short years of how much Hot Toys can improve their Iron Man making process as well.
Leaps and bounds with their technology, with the engineering that they put into these die-cast Iron Man figures. It's just crazy, the detail that goes into these things. And like we said, as time goes on, we are seeing those improvements put in place.
And I mean, this one, even though we didn't get the one with the gantry set, I mean, this came loaded with accessories. It had the sunglasses, the donuts, the what else am I missing here, Chris? I didn't have that right in front of me here.
Coffee cup.
Yep, the coffee cup. That's what I was thinking of there too.
That whole scene when he's nursing his hangover from the night before, and yeah, he's sitting in that donut in that giant donut eating his donuts. It's pretty awesome that they came with those accessories, and he's got Tony Stark head sculpt, which is really nice. It's a clean sculpt, no battle damage, so to speak. And
because the Mark V isn't he a little bloodied up?
Yeah, he is. And this head sculpt is a little bit better to potentially use for custom job or something like that. But anyway, he's got all kinds of attachments, all sorts of rocket launchers and that sort of thing. Compared to the other Iron Man figures that I have Mark 5 and Mark 6. It's tough to pick between those three, but this one's right up there.
I dare say, Chris, that Iron Man 2 might have the best trio of armor. I mean, well, actually, it's probably the only one that has three armors in it, but they're just so iconic to me. I think they all have benefits and stuff, but I love the funny thing is I'm looking over at Mark 5 and I'm looking at the Mark 6 and they all have a lot going for it. It's like, which one of the three is my favorite kid?
It's crazy. Like Iron Man 2 has some of the best suits for Iron Man that we've seen. And I just looking at it, I'm like, I have all three of mine were from Iron Man 2. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, well, I think you and I were talking too. The funny thing is going back through my rewatch that not that I ever disliked Iron Man 2, but I have a slightly giving it the edge of my favorite of the three. I mean, the first one still is there for nostalgic purposes and stuff. I don't hate Iron Man 3. I just really like the story in Iron Man 2 of trying to, solve all of his issues and try to get rid of the palladium poisoning. And I don't know, it's just great. But overall, I think if you don't have an Iron Man figure in your collection, I think this is one that you need to go get, because even if you don't have any, this is the one that shows up at the beginning of the movie. He has it all the way through basically until he gives himself the Mark 6 upgrade. Obviously he does only have the Mark 5 for the one scene and was it Monaco?
Yeah, Grand Prix.
Yeah. So the Grand Prix in Monaco where he has the suitcase armor Mark 5. I just the color contrasting on this one just looks great. I mean, I love all of the Iron Man figures. They all have at least something going for it. But I mean, it's even hard, as many as I have here, probably coming up with a top 5, but it definitely would be in the top 5.
It has a very iconic Iron Man look. It's got enough gold in it to contrast the red. And if you wanted just one Iron Man and you're a comic book fan, you're a movie fan, I think this is a good one. And it's still on Sideshow right now. It's one that you can still pick up at retail. But yeah.
And I don't even think, I mean, obviously we don't really have the good intel. I mean, a lot of people have it set up with the gantry. And I feel like you and I, that we don't have a ton of collecting space or display space, I should say. You don't need to get the gantry with it. I think the standalone figure itself is fantastic.
Yeah, I don't think I would go for the gantry. Some of our members and listeners have it, and I can admire it from afar.
The one thing I will say though too, and a lot of one of the criticisms, a lot of the Iron Man figures is the shoulder gap. And this one, I feel like the way that at least the way that I have it displayed, you don't really notice it all that much. There are some of them that it's a little bit more pronounced. I don't know. Overall, I think it's definitely, let's give this one, let's just go simply arc reactors. I know, Chris, I usually ask you to pick that. I'll let you pick it for Yondu, but what are we giving this for arc reactors?
I knew you were going to say that.
I'm predictable. I'm boring and predictable.
I would give it, for what it is and the price that I paid, I'd give it a 4 out of 4, man. I don't have any complaints with this figure, other than the fact that I can't figure out how to get the Tony Stark head sculpt on.
Yeah, that's one you might have to end up heating it up or something with like a hair dryer or something to. But yeah, that has been one challenge. I think the one thing, and I don't display any of my Iron Man figures with the bases except for Mark 6. This one just came with the basic chintzy Iron Man 2 one with the basic stand. Not that I needed anything fancy with that, but if you weren't going, I guess they just kind of assume most people would go for the gantry version. But I think that'd be my one criticism. Yeah, 4 arc reactors for me on this one.
Very nice. I guess we liked it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was in my top 5 figures of
Yeah.
last year, and I get it at the end of the year. So, oh, I will say though too, because I feel like I failed to mention a couple episodes ago, but it took them a while to get back to me. But Sideshow was great about sending me a replacement face mask for this with fixed magnets, and yeah, I could have glued them myself, but like I think I said, it was 2 of them. I just bought a brand new, and I can understand probably in transit either got too hot or too cold, and the glue just kind of popped off. It did take them a little bit, but eventually they did get it to me. It came in a just a small box, and it was well packaged inside with a bunch of bubble wrap, and just was in like a small little plastic baggie. Yeah, that was my one interaction with Sideshow customer service. They were slow, but they were also really busy because it was the end of the year with the holidays and stuff. So I'll give them a pass about that, just because that's what I do in my day job is as customer service as well. But yeah, very happy with how that was resolved, and certainly glad that I have that fixed.
Good to hear. Good to hear. It's always nice when Sideshow can rectify a problem. So
And I think that's just another reason to purchase through them, because they have record of your order. It's not like you buy it from somebody else, secondhand or another retailer. They have a relationship with Hot Toys. They can get extra parts in, whereas somebody else like maybe wouldn't have that opportunity. And I know that we're paying a little bit more for shipping than we would somewhere else, but the reward points is basically the offset of that. And just knowing that there's some buyer protection there, if something should go wrong like it did, they're willing to make it right. And that's just enough for me to keep giving them my business. All right, Chris, let's switch gears and talk about this Yondu deluxe figure, the figure that will go down in infamy as the figure that you're like, hey, Brian, this looks pretty cool. What do you think? I'm like, nah, I don't know. I mean, it looks pretty great, but I think I figured that he wasn't. I mean, he's a big part of Guardians of the Galaxy and has obviously a larger role in Guardians 2, but I didn't see him being a character that was going to be that desirable for a lot of people. But what happened, I think, is the fact people got it in hand and they just were like, this face sculpt looks perfect. I mean, it's like, and anytime you hear the phrase like, this is one of Hot Toys' best face sculpts ever, even people that aren't fans of that character are going to go out and get it because they want to have the figure that everybody says is great, even though it's not a focus of their collection. So you're like, I don't know. And I'm like, I think you can wait. Maybe you'll get free shipping on it or something like that. And then literally like the next day it went waitlist. And I was like, God, I felt like a pretty lousy friend then. I'm just so glad that you eventually did track it down so we can bury the hatchet on this one. But what are you thinking about this one, Chris?
Man, yeah, I won't go into any more depth on that situation, but this figure, when I had the opportunity to pick it up, I jumped on it and I was really excited because it was the day that there was a eBay coupon. So I think I saved about 10, I think I saved 15% on this figure. And it was a used figure, but he had only displayed it and hadn't taken out any of the accessories or anything like that. So it ended up being essentially the exact same amount that it would have been at retail from Sideshow with shipping. I mean, like within cents of what it would have been. So so
I'm just laughing over here.
I know if there was a figure that was meant to come home to me, it was this one. And I'm really, really glad that I got this figure. I love Yondu, especially from Guardians 2. That movie resonates with me. I know it's not the most popular movie for a lot of MCU fans, but I really liked it. So I knew I needed this figure. Man, I opened this thing up. I looked at that head sculpt and I'm just blown away at how much they nailed Michael Rooker's appearance. It's just spot on. And I think it might be one of those things where he's got a very unique face. So it's just it might be easier for the sculptors to nail it. I don't know. I don't know how they got this one so spot on, but this figure is really about the face sculpt and then the clothing. It's there's so many details and levels and elements to his outfit. He's got this long trench coat with all sorts of raised designs in it, with straps that are loose, straps that are snapped. He's got belts and all sorts of attachments, and I just it's one of those figures where you can just keep on digging into it, and there's something new every time you look at it. It's just it's definitely that's why it was in my top 5. It's a figure that if you're a Guardians fan, if you're a Marvel fan, it's really something that, in my opinion, you probably want it in your display. So,
Chris, you have you? I know you probably haven't
yeah.
been looking lately because you already have it, but you any sense at all of like what it's doing current market condition wise?
I haven't checked. I think it's come down a little bit from where it was hanging out. I know one of our members, Matt, he had one, but it was the regular version. He sold it, and I think it sold almost immediately from him listing it at a very fair price. So I haven't been keeping up, but it's definitely above retail. I think it's at least 15 to 20% above what the retail mark was at. And yeah, so it was about 251. I think these are easily selling around 300, 315 in that range. You might be able to pick up one cheaper. And yeah, it's one of those that by missing the pre-order or purchase on Sideshow, it it kind of stinks because you're going to have to pay up.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of them that are some of them around 350 or so. There's the occasional one. There's one that just sold not long ago for 446. That's one of the highest I've seen. Looks like it's from
Holy
an
cow.
that looks like it's from one of those overseas sellers though. Yeah, I mean that's just what happens. I think the one trend that you and I have noticed over time is again these figures that people aren't instantly day one pre-ordering. As soon as people have it from Secret Base and are doing YouTube reviews and saying how great something is, well, that's when all those pre-orders weren't put in. There's not a huge run, and it makes the figures more scarce. It's a supply and demand thing. So again, if you think you're gonna want a figure, then we highly recommend not waiting, because the more you wait, the opportunity cost just goes up and up. So Chris, to be honest, I never knew what his arrow was called, but apparently it's called a Yaka arrow. So I want you to rank this figure in terms of number of Yaka arrows.
Okay. Well, since this figure is in my top 5 and it's pretty freaking awesome, I think you can guess what I'm going to give it. There's honestly, I do not have one complaint with this figure. There's a few things about setting him up with the arrow, with the trail and everything, but I haven't had time to really sit down and get everything set up properly. I took some fun pics with him and Mark IV hanging out, and
which will be the artwork image for the episode, by the way.
Yeah, check that out. My first kind of foray in just some Hot Toys photography in my little photo booth. Roy had some great tips, so I got to look at those. But anyway, this figure is very high in my collection, and I'm going to give him 4 Yaka arrows.
Least surprising rating ever.
I know, right?
Yeah, and I know these are outside of Yondu is not really available now unless you're on the secondary market or a Facebook group. Mark IV is available now, and if you're an Iron Man fan, you will not regret it. It's fantastic, and that's one that I think on that secondary market, once people go back looking for it, they see that it was high on a lot of lists in 2018. And people are going to go back and look for it. And I can see it having that 15 to 20% bump on, the aftermarket price eventually. But you can probably, if that ever does happen, wait for those eBay deals. and probably score it for retail. So there, it does pay to be patient. It's certainly, you don't want to just run out and do stupid things like I did and get Iron Man figures, but now I don't have to stress about it.
You crazy, crazy man.
Yeah, well, somebody's got to be crazy around here. So
Yeah.
I think we'd be crazy if we kept going with this episode, Chris. So let's wrap this up. And I just wanted to thank everybody for bearing with us with this kind of one part episode. And hopefully the transition was fairly smooth. And hopefully I can fix that in the editing process. But for plug time, Chris, we have our website, sixskillscavengers.com, where we have those Marvel and Star Wars checklists that we were referencing, with links to Sideshow, with affiliate links to eBay to kind of save you steps on making sure you've got the right MMS number. It's really helpful. And if you do make a purchase through eBay, Chris and I get a couple dollars kicked back to us that helps us with those hosting fees every month through Libsyn. We have our Facebook page. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We've referenced multiple times our private group on Facebook, Six Scale Scavengers Collectors. I think we're at 69 members now, Chris. And again, we're biased, but it's just a fantastic community. We'd love to have more like-minded collectors to talk about and geek out a lot of these hot toys that we do talk about. If you've got a friend or family member you think would also love to listen to the podcast, we're on Apple Podcast, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and sixskillscavengers.libsyn.com. If you want to grab that RSS feed and throw it into your podcast catcher of choice. Quick shout out to the Paradox Nerd on YouTube. He's got video reviews out there for hot toys. He also does statue reviews. Tashi Station, full scale to 6-scale collectibles. John Martino also has a YouTube channel. Great stuff. He just did a review of the Tactical Suit Batman. I know we don't talk about DC on the podcast, but got to give a little bit of love to our fellow collectors out there. Also give a shout out to Collecting Weekly Podcast and YouTube channel, Zach and the crew. They did a episode 21. They did an interview with Chris. Help me with this name here.
Used a sink.
Thank you. That's why I had you in here for the plug time. And he has Jazz Inc. dioramas. And of course, last but not least, we are part of the Brick City Blockade podcast network. Catch them at brickcityblockade.com. All right, Chris, that will put a wrap on the episode that we're not referencing just because it's a kind of unlucky number. But I will say we are gearing up already for episode 14.
Yeah, we're going to get our notes ready and see how this week goes and hopefully have another live video.
Yeah, stay tuned. I think 9 Eastern Standard Time is a kind of a time that works for most, doesn't work for everybody, but when we do host a live event in the group, it is available for watching afterwards. And just based on a lot of feedback and good tips, we found some things that make it a little bit more enjoyable for people that aren't actually tuning in live for us to repeat the questions and then answer them, bring on other collectors. That's probably the part that was the most fun of our trial run. So if you want to join that conversation, join our private Facebook group. That's where we'll be hosting it. And it's just kind of a thank you to those folks that not only engage with us and other collectors in that group, is just kind of a thank you to that and helping them be part of our pretty kick-ass community.
That it is, sir.
Chris, we usually wrap things up, and I also figured out that it's probably only better if one of us says this than both, so I'll let you wrap it up, my friend.
Excelsior.